From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
I'd like to start by thanking the National Endowment for the Arts for its continued sponsorship of the festival and of this pavilion, even in these challenging budget times. And I'd like to thank the Endowment and the Poetry Foundation, represented here by Steve Young, for its continued sponsorship over 8 years now of the extraordinary Poetry Out Loud program. In 2012, Poetry Out Loud reached 365,000 students from over 2,000 schools in every state, 2 territories, and the District of Columbia, and awarded over $100,000 in prizes and scholarships. And I can tell you that the recipients of those prizes and scholarships, or some of them, are going to be here today. Now, I have been very proudly associated with Poetry Out Loud from its inception. First as a staffer from the National Endowment for the Arts, and this is a genuine 2006 National Finalist Medal, which I did not earn. And then for the last many years, I've been involved at the very beginning level of Poetry Out Loud as a judge from my local high school. Is there anybody here from Washington Lee High School in Arlington? We are the winningest high school in Poetry Out Loud history, and I hope that anybody here from Washington Lee is getting extra credit in English for being here. This year, for the first time, I'm also appearing as a Poetry Out Loud parent, because my son will be participating this year for Washington Lee, which means I don't get to be a judge. And go Jeffrey. I want to acknowledge the presence here of the champions' parents, and also of a coach. I'll introduce them later, but you guys play a really critical role, as do all of the teachers who teach this program. One thing about Poetry Out Loud is you listen, as you go to all the different tents today, and you listen to all the speakers, remember that this presentation, the first presentation of the day, is really special. Of all the presentations at the National Book Festival, there's only one that isn't by authors. It's by readers and for readers. And that's this presentation that you're here for today. There it is. Yeah. So today you're going to have the very rare treat of hearing the 2012 Poetry Out Loud champions. We're going to hear third place winner, Marque Hassan. Second place winner, Claude Mumeri. And national champion, Kristen Dupart. So Kristen, Claude, and Marque represent the very best kind of readers. The readers who take a work of art, a work of literature, and make it their own. And that's what Poetry Out Loud is all about, and why we're all here. So please welcome our national champions. We're going to start with Marque Hassan, who's the Utah State Champion for 2012 from Logan High in Logan, Utah. She's here with her dad, Dennis Hassan. She is now a freshman at Utah State, where she plans to be an acting major, and she is currently a lead dancer in Legally Blonde, which is fabulous. And my day job is as a lawyer, and I have to say Legally Blonde is what I personally model my professional career after. So please, Marque.
I felt a funeral in my brain by Emily Dickinson. I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading, till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating, beating, till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul with those same boots of lead again. Then space began to toll as all the heavens were a bell. And being but an ear and eye in silence, some strange race wrecked solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing. Then, thank you. And this is Ego by Denise Duhamel. I just didn't get it. Even with the teacher holding an orange, the earth, in one hand, and the lemon, the moon, in the other. Her favorite student, the sun, standing behind her with a flashlight. I just couldn't grasp it. This whole citrus universe, these bumpy planets revolving so slowly, nobody could even see themselves moving. I used to think if I could only concentrate hard enough, I could be the one person to feel what no one else could. Sense a small tug from the ground, the skies shift, the earth changing gears. Even though I was only one mini speck on a speck, even though I was merely a pinprick and one goosebump on the orange, I was sure then I was the most specially perceptive. Perceptively sensitive. I was sure then my mother was the only mother to snap, "The world doesn't revolve around you!" The earth was fragile and mostly water, just the way the orange was mostly water if you peeled it, just the way I was mostly water if you peeled me. Looking back on that third grade science demonstration, I can understand why some people gave up on fame or religion or cures. Especially people who have an understanding of the excruciating crawl of the world, who have a well-developed sense of spatial reasoning and the tininess that it is to be one of us. But not me. Even now, I wouldn't mind being God. The force who spins the planets the way I spin a globe, a basketball, a yo-yo. I wouldn't mind being that teacher who chooses the fruit, or that favorite kid who gives the moon its glow. Thank you.
Awesome. Next, we're going to hear from Claude Mumeri, who's from the Vermont state champion from Burlington High School in Burlington, Vermont. He's now attending St. Lawrence University, and he's done since his championship narration work with NASA. So if you want to hear Claude's work, Google Loop the movie on YouTube and check it out.
Good afternoon. For Coachella this year, I had the opportunity to recite 3 poems. I'm going to present 2 of them for today. One being Chicago by Carl Sandburg, and the second being She Walks in Beauty by Carl Sandburg. And, Chicago, the reason why I chose it is because it was a very challenging poem in terms of interpretation and recitation, so I thought I'd take that up and see what I would get out of it. So here is Chicago by Carl I'll sing. Hog butcher for the world, toolmaker, stacker of wheat, player with railroads and the nation's freight handler. Stormy, husky, brawling city of the big shoulders. They tell me you are wicked, and I believe them, for I have seen your painted women under the gas lamps luring the farm boys. And they tell me you are crooked, and I answer yes, it is true. I have seen the gunman kill and go free to kill again. And they tell me you are brutal, and my reply is, on the faces of women and children, I have seen the marks of want and hunger. And having answered so, I turn once more to those who sneer at this my city. And I give them back the sneer and say to them, come and show me another city with lifted heads, singing so proud to be alive and coarse and strong and cunning. Flinging magnetic curses amid the toil of piling job on job. Here is a tall, bold slugger set vivid against the little soft cities. Fierce as a dog with tongue lapping for action. Cunning as a savage pitted against the wilderness. Bareheaded, shoveling, wrecking, planning, building, breaking, rebuilding under the smoke. Dust all over his mouth, laughing with white teeth. Under the terrible burden of destiny, laughing as a young man laughs, laughing even as an ignorant fighter laughs who has never lost a battle, bragging and laughing that under his wrist is the pulse, and under his ribs, the heart of the people. Laughing the stormy, husky, brawling laughter of youth, half naked, sweating, proud to be hog butcher, toolmaker, stacker of wheat, player with railroads, and freight handler to the nation. And the second poem, which is She Walks in Beauty, is actually one of my favorite love poems. It is very, very beautiful. And the reason why I chose it is because the year before I competed in the poetry art competition, there was a girl who said that she had a tattoo on her foot of the title of the poem, She Walks in Beauty. And she heard me recite, and she said that it'd be amazing if I would make a perfect interpretation of the poem She Walks in Beauty. And so I took that into consideration and did it for the 2012 Poetry Art Competition. So here is She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron. She walks in beauty like the nights of cloudless climes and starry skies. And all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to God denies. One shade more, one ray the less, that half impair the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweep its press. How pure, how dear their dwelling place. And all that cheek, and all that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent. The smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days of goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent.
Anyone else want to go out and get a tattoo on their foot now? Last but not least, very much not least, please welcome Kristen Dupard, who's the Mississippi State Champion. She was from Ridgeland High School in Ridgeland, Mississippi. She's now a freshman at the University of Southern Mississippi, and she's here today with her mom, Angela, and her coach, Stacy Howell. And Kristen mentioned that she put on a Grand Rapids accent and a red suit to play Judy Garland as a monologue for her forensics team. That was really cool. So, national champion.
Hello everybody, I'm Kristen, and I chose 3 poems for the national competition, and today I'm going to do 2 of them for you. The first one I will be doing is What Work Is by Philip Levine, and I actually got to meet Philip Levine yesterday at the Library of Congress, and I got to have an interview with him and talk to him about the poem, and this poem really resonates with me because, you know, it speaks about the voiceless worker, and he portrayed that so well in his poem, so I want to share that with you guys today. What Work Is by Philip Levine. We stand in the rain in a long line waiting at Ford Highland Park for work. You know what work is. If you're old enough to read this, you know what work is, although you may not do it. Forget you. This is about waiting, shifting from one foot to another, feeling the light rain falling like mist into your hair, blurring your vision until you think you see your own brother ahead of you, maybe 10 places. You rub your glasses with your fingers, and of course it's someone else's brother, narrower across your shoulders than yours, but with the same sad slouch. Grin that does not hide the stubbornness, the sad refusal to give in to rain, to the hours of wasted waiting, to the knowledge that somewhere ahead a man is waiting who will say, no, we're not hiring today, for any reason he wants. You love your brother. Now suddenly you can hardly stand the love flooding you for your brother who's not beside you or behind or ahead because he's home, trying to sleep off a miserable night shift at Cadillac so he can get up before noon to study his German. Works 8 hours a night so he can sing Wagner, the opera you hate most. The worst music ever invented. How long has it been since you told him you loved him? Held his wide shoulders, opened your eyes wide and said those words, and maybe kissed his cheek. You've never done something so simple, so obvious, not because you're too young or too dumb, not because you're jealous or even mean or incapable of crying in the presence of another man, no. Just because you don't know what work is. For you guys is I'm a Fool to Love You by Cornelius Eady. And the reason why I chose this poem is because I love the message that it portrayed, the imagery of it, and it was just awesome, and I just love it, and I'm going to present that poem to you next. I'm a Fool to Love You by Cornelius Eady. Some folks will tell you the blues is a woman, some type of supernatural creature. My mother would tell you, if she could, about her life with my father, a strange and sometimes cruel gentleman. She would tell you about the choices a young black woman faces. Is falling in love with some man a deal with the devil? In blue terms, the tongue we use when we don't want nuance to get in the way, when we need to talk straight. My mother chooses my father after choosing a man who was, as we sing it, of no account. This man made my father look good. That's how bad it was. He made my father seem like an island in the middle of a stormy sea. He made my father look like a rock. And is the blues the moment you realize you exist in a stacked deck? You look in a mirror at your young face, the face my sister carries, and you know it's the only leverage you've got. Does this create a hurt that whispers? How are you going to do? Is the blues the moment you shrug your shoulders and agree a girl without money is nothing, dust to be pushed around by any old breeze? Compared to this, my father seems, briefly, to be a fire escape. This is the way the blues works its sorry wonders. Makes trouble look like a feather bed. Makes the grown man's kisses a healing. Thank you.
Wow. I want to welcome, or at least acknowledge the students and teachers of Stonewall Middle School out in the audience, future Poetry Out Loud champions. We have a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions for our champions, if you want to come on up. Practice tips from Stonewall Middle School. And we do have microphones if you want to come up and ask your questions. Actually, my first question, since you went first, Mark, you didn't talk about why you picked your poems.
Well, I guess I sort of picked poems that spoke to me the most. And it was interesting that I picked both I Felt a Funeral in My Brain and Ego, because on the surface level they look very, very different. And that's one of the reasons I chose them, is because they're very different styles and the way they're written. But once you look at them, they both have very similar themes, where they're talking about things beyond us and finding our place in the world. And I didn't see it as much in I Felt a Funeral in My Brain. I thought it was a dark poem, but it's really about that connection. And it was interesting to me that I picked both of those. But it was really, I read a lot of poems, and I picked the ones that were really, really powerful. And then I had like 15 poems that spoke to me, and I narrowed it down from there even, just to the poems that I thought I could connect to the most, so that I could share them the best. But yeah, that's my...
I have two questions. The first is how you got involved in the Poetry Out Loud competition, like if it was through a speech club at high school or whatever, if you could talk about that, and also if you could all say what your third poem was in the competition.
Okay, I'm Krista, and I got involved in this program from the National Forensics League, and my coach, Miss Stacey Howell, is here. She'll wait for you. And so I was involved in that program, and one day I just came into her class, and she was just like, you should try this program. And then, you know, she handed me the anthology, and she told me the website, and we did some information on it, and we went to the school. I did the school competition, and it kind of just spiraled from there. So it was just a really great program to get involved in, and I'm just really excited.
My involvement in Poetry Out Loud started in my junior year, where we had a poetry unit, and my English teacher required us to memorize one poem and recite it to the class, and told us about Poetry Out Loud, and that there was a school competition, a state competition, and a national competition. And just doing the school competition itself was, I hadn't given any thought at all. And so he encouraged me to try it, and I did. And my first year, I came out as school champion, and then competed in the Vermont state competition, and I ended up going to DC, which was very exciting. So it was in the classroom that Poetry Out Loud was introduced to me. But having been born in Africa, in elementary school, we did a lot of fables and poems in the classroom. So I've always had sort of I've had experience with poems and sort of the spoken word portion of it. So that's kind of it. So.
I kind of heard about it on a kind of a whim, actually. It was, I know some people who work for the state in the arts for the state, and this was the first year that Utah had a competition that wasn't for just the people in their high schools, and my high school doesn't do it. So my friends heard that this was an opportunity, and they said, hey, this is something you would be interested, that you'd be good at this. And I was like, okay, whatever. And at that time, I was doing a poetry unit in my AP English class, so I was like constantly thinking about poetry, and I got some of my friends involved, and we just read a bunch of poems together, and we got all down into the details, and we were studying poets, and before that, I'd never done anything, and all of a sudden, I was doing it 24/7, so yeah, it was just sort of word of mouth as I found out. And to answer the other question, my third poem was W.S. Merwin's Vixen, so yeah.
Teacher librarian in a middle school, Stonewall Middle School in fact, and my students don't really know about Poetry Out Loud. So I'm asking you, what would you tell the adults in the lives of students about how this has changed you and how important this is, and what can we do as adults to get students involved in Poetry Out Loud?
I know firsthand that Poetry Out Loud has helped me, and I've been blessed with so many opportunities just by being involved in this program. I've gotten to meet B.B. King and recite for B.B. King. I've gotten, to go to the state capitol in Mississippi and perform. I'm here. I had dinner last night in the Library of Congress, so that was awesome. Poetry Out Loud provides a lot of opportunities for young people, and something that I would say to inspire teachers to really get into the lives of young people to develop this program is to just encourage them, help them go after their dreams. Don't just say, okay, you have to be this. Let them try something new, because you never know. I would have never thought that I would be here today speaking in front of you. So just go and motivate them. Even if they think they can't do it, make them think that they can. Because so many times people feel so discouraged, like, oh, I can never get up there and speak like Marquet or Claude. So just get out there and encourage them. That's the biggest thing. And my mom knows firsthand, and my coach, Miss Stacey, how they know how big I am on, encouragement, and how that has helped me. And, I'm pretty sure it's helped Claude and McKay. So I just want to encourage you teachers just to really get involved in their lives and make a difference. So thank you.
I mean, that was the perfect answer. I'm not going to touch that at all, but just to add on, poetry, not only is there opportunity, but also, I feel like through Poetry Out Loud, I've become a lot more eloquent in my speaking. You know, I'm a lot more careful with my words, and I try to sort of pick out sort of terms that make me sound a lot smarter than I am. You know, and it works. It really helps with the language portion of things. And in terms of opportunity, it was through Poetry Out Loud. There was this producer who works for NASA and makes documentaries who heard me recite and, you know, thought that I'd be the perfect voice for his movie. And I had the opportunity to narrate a documentary for NASA. I mean, that's... I really could have never imagined that in a million years. So this is really an amazing program. And I'm really bummed that I can't do it anymore because I'm in college. But really, you guys, the young students out there, really encourage you to just go out and do it, you know. The poems, when poems are heard, sort of, I don't know, there's something more that comes out of it from simply reading a poem than hearing it, you know. And some of you might have experienced that today as we read, you know. It's definitely a different feel, a different experience. So just do it, you know?
Just to add on real quick, we basically covered everything, but I think for the teachers to encourage the kids, just sort of push them in the right direction, because I found that, like, I've talked to a lot of people through this that didn't expect that they would ever love poetry, because you know, it's you just sort of read it and you read it through real quick, but if you really get down into the details and notice all of the subtleties and how every single word is picked out so specifically, and how you don't have to have the same interpretation of a poem as your neighbor, and really allow them to connect to it on their own level and find things in it that speak to them, you'll find that they'll just dig right into it and love it, because it's hard not to. I don't think I know anybody who doesn't love poetry once they really immerse themselves in it, but yeah, the end.
Also, if you do really, really well, something really cool just happened to me, you get a letter from the president congratulating you. So, really, that's a motion to really go forward. So it was really cool to get that letter and know that, you know, people, you know, government officials are behind what we do. So just, that's more of an encouragement to do it, I guess, yeah.
How can we make ourselves better at poetry?
Start and go and work on it. And I think also talk to a lot of people about the poem and like really try to connect to it. And I keep saying that. You can work on performance techniques, and you can try to improve your speech and eye contact and posture and stuff. But most importantly is just making sure that you love the poem, and that you love to perform it, and that you want to share it with other people, and that comes across when you perform for people. So, yeah, just read it over and over and over again, and find new things. You'll find new things every time you read it. I still do, but yeah, that's what I would say.
Just to add on to that, one thing that works a lot for me is when reading a poem, you really want to read it out loud and hear the poem, like I said before, because that's a completely different experience than just being silent and reading it with your eyes rather than with your voice. You know, it really helps a lot. So hear the poem instead of seeing it. That might also work.
When you wanted to stick with poetry, like to speak it in public?
The question was, how did you decide to stick with poetry and publicly recite it, which is a scary thing?
Well, I would say I decided that I wanted to do poetry and stick with it because I felt that through poetry I can make a statement that sometimes is really hard to make when you just want to go out and just say whatever you want to say. But I feel through poems you can kind of, tell people really what you think, So I just feel that that's one of the biggest reasons why I stuck with poetry is because I felt that I can get a message across to so many people that will come out to hear poetry. They won't come up just to hear me, ramble on and on about something. So if I had it through a poem, they were like, okay, we're going to go see this girl that's, speaking about, that's reciting a poem. So that's one of the reasons why I stuck with poetry.
For me, I've been involved in theater since I was pretty young, and I've always loved to perform things, but I found that the poetry experience is so different, and I didn't expect that it would be. But I remember performing my third poem at the state competition in Utah, and just coming off stage and feeling so elated, and just feeling like I had done the best performance of anything that I had ever done in my life. And I was trying to think why that was. I think a lot of it was because when I'm reciting poetry, I'm really me. And you let yourself go through the words, but you're not playing a character, and you're not pretending to be someone else. And that's one of the really beautiful things I think about sharing poetry, is that it connects to everyone, and you pick poems that connect to you. So when you're sharing things through it, you're really showing yourself, and like Kristen was saying, showing how you really think. And it's a very different performing experience. But yeah.
Any of you written poems of your own, or do you just recite them?
I haven't. Have either of you? Have you? Well, that's cool. I wish I had. I really want to. I keep trying to start, but I read so many poems that every time I start, I'm like, oh, this is not very good, and I walk away from it. But I'm working on it. I mean, I want to get involved in it. I'm trying to get into a poetry writing class at my university, but whatever.
I think that most poets will tell you that the best way to write good poetry is to read a lot of poetry. And so that would be my advice.
I always say I don't write or recite, but I always find that I always like to be a sponsorship for the poem, because so many people are like, I'm not going to get up there after I write a poem and read it. So I'm just like, oh, I could be, a sponsorship for that poet and get out there and really get their message across to other people. So it's like I'm a missionary for the poet. So.
I don't know what time, you guys can tell me, but later on this afternoon, there will be a presentation by the National Student Poets. What time? Sunday at noon. Sunday at noon. So, y'all come back. And a round of applause for the 2012 National Poetry Out Loud Champions. Thank you all for spending the morning with us.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.